psychological and economic war seems favor rather than military war against Venezuela. At least that is the opinion of United States diplomats James Story and Elliotr Abrams. It seems like they would like to pressure the Venezuelan government to flee so that they can install an alternative puppet government. It looks like they are deploying all sorts of military assets across the Caribbean without being completely convinced that they will use them for a full-scale invasion that would involve death of American troops, which is not authorized by woke public opinion. The $50 million bounty to Nicolás Maduro has failed miserably, including refusal by President Maduro's airplane pilot to land his airplane at a non-designated airport. Venezuelan exiles, meanwhile, continue exerting psychological war against Venezuelans in the homeland in the hope that we become all stressed out and fearful of the might of the United States. People who exile, by definition, are not willing to live in Venezuela. They prefer to live elsewhere. Venezuelans within the country are best suited to defend our country and define our future. Venezuelans within the country are unlikely to step away in favor of exiles that would come only if the constitutional government is ousted. Military escalation can be seen as a play of maxima. While United States deploys USS Gerald Ford to the Caribbean, Belarus deploys Oreshniks, and Russia fires test missiles capable of traveling 4,000 kilometers. Meanwhile, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Kamla Persad-Besasar, doesn't care, having been promoted as persona non grata by the Venezuelan National Assembly, while she says she is being bullied, while in fact she has been bullying Venezuela with her unfriendly seizure attempt of Dragon gas. International community was busy this morning voting on a resolution against blockade against Cuba, which was approved by a majority of United Nations. Only countries that opposed such a resolution were United States, Ukraine, Argentina, Paraguay, Israel, North Macedonia. United States continues utter isolation, reminding the international community that it is utmost priority to remove the seat of the United Nations out of New York City and into a more neutral location. During the last 32 years, United Nations, year by year, has consistently voted for the end of blockade against Cuba, but United States never complies with the resolution, taking advantage of its recurrent condition of host country for the entire United Nations. Diplomats around the world must address the urgency of removing United Nations out of United States soil, otherwise resolutions against United States actions will continue being ignored. Donald Trump, meanwhile, has traveled across Asian countries, acting like a clown, and he's been offered all kinds of crowns and toys as Japanese, Koreans, and other nationalities have discovered that flattering Donald Trump is the best way to receive low tariffs while their important decisions continue being made in accordance to other allies. Japan is no longer willing to fight either China or Russia, which have increasingly become important trading partners for Japanese. During the next few hours, we shall see the results of the summit meeting between President Xi and President Trump in order to assess how rapidly the standing of the United States as a great power continues declining. Venezuelans are playing with all scenarios. We are increasingly being bombarded by reports suggesting that preferred action by United States would be either economic war or psychological war, rather than military war. Venezuelans cannot take this as a sign of victory because other reports suggest that psychological war would aim Venezuela to be completely convinced that the worst is over, and then a surprise attack would arrive against Venezuelan sovereignty if Venezuela fails to be alert. Venezuela is aware that initiation of Third World War may well start within the Caribbean, as it would involve militaries of China, Iran, and Russia, all of which are actively deployed within Venezuelan territory, as their personnel is training Venezuelan troops how to fire missiles and read radar signals from equipment made by our allied countries. Similarly, it cannot be discounted that Russia offered Oreshnik missile to Belarus and tested new long-range missile Poseidon across half of the world after United States made the decision to deploy USS Gerald Ford into Venezuelan waters. All countries are engaging in a show of force, which, if managed responsibly, would guarantee a peaceful Cold War in the Caribbean for a long time. Odds, however, are more in favor of Russia than the United States, which is the opposite case than the original Cold War. In the original Cold War, United States and the Soviet Union were increasing their arms race until the Soviet Union could not keep up and dissolved. If history were to rhyme, Russia would continue in tandem with its allies, arming and producing ever more sophisticated weapons, while the United States would look increasingly unable to catch up. Increasingly, military reports suggest that United States firepower is increasingly antiquated and not well tested. F-35 airplanes are not as transparent as it was thought, and they were easily discovered by Venezuelan military while flying. While the Venezuelan military spends all day studying Houthi techniques on how to fire missiles to American aircraft carriers in the Red Sea, it is becoming increasingly clear that options for success of the United States in its pretended war against Venezuela would be with a massive land invasion involving hundreds of thousands of Marines, while there are only 10 or 15,000 Marines deployed across the Caribbean. Military units associated with USS Gravely, still in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, have reported an abundance of Russian nuclear submarines and missiles in nearby waters and sovereign lands of Venezuela. United States is cautious and prefers to send fake alerts such as the CIA plot recently denounced by President Nicolás Maduro regarding a possible invasion from Trinidad into Venezuela if the Venezuelans had retaliated the false flag, with the direct consequence of cancellation of gas deals between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. The position on Europeans in this Caribbean war is unclear. It has been significant to see that European countries side with Russia in the topic of United States harassing Cuba by blockade. Diplomats of countries such as Denmark sound indistinguishable from Russian diplomats. Perhaps this war in the Caribbean issue could become a point of understanding between Russia and European countries, as at least one point of common encountering has been diplomatically found. It would be refreshing to see joint negotiations between Russia and European countries for advancing the United Nations resolution in favor of letting Cuba be spared of United States blockade or economic war. Psychological war against Venezuela has been applied during decades. Many Venezuelans have counteracted psychological war every day, as there are exiles who press for foreign interference against Venezuela every single day in their social media outlets, while independent Venezuelan media based in Venezuela and not based in United States or Europe are little known and underfunded. Perhaps a positive consequence of this psychological war will result in worldwide recognition of Venezuelan resilience, showing increasing levels of immunity against being tormented by psychological war. Narrative today is increasingly positioned to ensure that Venezuela will not be invaded despite the great amount of firepower, which is designed to act exclusively as psychological war. Venezuelan military continues fortifying the country and deploying new equipment, while the economic summit with Russian business community is being held this week in Caracas. Colombian Gustavo Petro has also addressed further thoughts on the war on drugs, as he labels persons who have been shot on speedboats as drug trafficking clerical workers at the mercy of drug cartel lord employers, denouncing unavailability of other sources of income as the drug consumption worldwide provides so much money to the drug trafficking industry that drug traffickers are capable of crowding out remaining legal industries. This narrative on drug counter traffic continues being challenged by United States Congress, which sent to Department of Justice led by Pamela Bondi a written request so that legal advisors of Department of Justice may be summoned into United States Congress so that they explain to the American constituents the legal basis for shooting down speedboats as a legal option. Department of Justice has acknowledged receipt of such letter, while so far they only claim everything they do is legal, while the legal community worldwide has shown abundant reasons for illegality of extrajudicial summarial shootings. As Department of Defense gets prepared to fake legal opinions when they concur to United States Congress, a desirable outcome would be that many congressmen will become convinced that so far what has been done has violated United States and international law, and therefore Congress might pass finally a resolution prohibiting Donald Trump to continue acting against the law in regards to military deployment of the United States into the Caribbean. We must congratulate the lone voice of Prime Minister Mia of Barbados, who consistently requests for peace as a CARICOM asset. Venezuelans sympathize with the calls for peace. However, the Venezuelan military is under the obligation of continuing stocking up on military deterrence equipment in order to prevent United States invasion. It is likely that had Venezuela not been so efficient in arming the country, we would already have been invaded by United States. The prudence of United States military on not going too far against Venezuelan targets contrasts with politicians in the United States who are very hawkish, as they are not personally exposing themselves or their families into possible death. Considering that Marco Rubio is in the Middle East and Donald Trump is in Pacific Asia and Southern Command Admiral resigned, the war against Venezuela continues devoid of leadership, while Russia continues showing force through delivery of fresh weapons to Venezuela and show of new transcontinental missiles, while China during the last few days has shot down 2 United States aircraft on Pacific waters, while Iranians blatantly speak about a possible nuclear attack onto Israel in retaliation for any attack Iran may suffer. It is not a coincidence that Russia, Iran, and Venezuela are sanctioned in their petroleum industries and militarily harassed by United States and its allies simultaneously. During the last few days, we are all expecting the United States and its allies to strike first, but so far our deterrence techniques have succeeded as we remain on a plateau of expecting a nuclear collapse, which fortunately continues being announced as psychological warfare, but so far has not arrived. Provocations such as United States military aircraft and ships very close to Venezuelan borders are provocations that are not being responded militarily by Venezuela, but rather diplomatically or commercially, as was the Dragon gas suspension with Trinidad. Venezuelan military does not want to strike the United States first, and Venezuelan opinion makers, well versed in psychological warfare, are complaining that Venezuela is not firing first, as their sole objective is to find an excuse for a regime change war, which is increasingly deplored by an international community that continues recognizing Ivan Gil as a foreign secretary and Nicolás Maduro as a president of the republic, as confirmed in today's votes in United Nations.